Good morning, it's today again. Welcome back to Joseph's Reserves. I'm Joseph, and I store 20% of my income in the form of rare coins and precious metals. When most people hear the words stacking or saving metals, they think of gold and silver. They think of ounces of gold stored away for the future, and they think of silver coins stacked in tubes. But there is another metal that's been used by civilizations for thousands of years, and today it's probably one of the most overlooked metals in the world: copper. Today I'm going through a box of $25 worth of pennies, and I'm opening every roll and sorting every coin looking for one thing: copper. Congratulations to Michael Hermes for being the first to comment on yesterday's video. Thank you so much for the support. Go down into the comment section to find him and start a conversation. One of the things I love about coin roll hunting is that it slows you down. There's something relaxing about opening a roll, looking at every date, listening to the sound of the coins, and knowing that every once in a while you'll find something interesting. Sometimes it's a wheat cent, sometimes an old proof, sometimes it's an error coin, but today I'm looking for copper. So let's start with the obvious question: why copper? Why spend time stacking one of the cheapest industrial metals on Earth? And the answer begins 1,000 years ago. Long before the United States existed, long before even the Roman Empire, citizens discovered that certain metals made excellent money: gold, silver, and copper, or sometimes bronze, but each of these served a different purpose. Gold stored enormous value in a very small amount of metal, silver became everyday money for merchants and trade, and copper handled the smallest transactions, the things ordinary people bought every single day. If you've ever seen ancient Roman coins or medieval European coinage, you've probably noticed something. Not everything was gold. Most of it wasn't even silver. A tremendous amount of everyday commerce was conducted using copper and bronze coins. Copper has always been the working man's monetary metal. Copper wasn't valuable because it's rare, it's valuable because everyone needed it. That statement is just as true today as it was 2,000 years ago. Think about your house. Every electrical outlet, every breaker, every light switch, every appliance, every electrical motor, every air conditioner or computer, phone charger, every vehicle, copper is everywhere. In many ways, modern civilization literally runs on copper. Gold is beautiful and silver is incredibly useful, but copper is essential. And that brings me to something I've been thinking about recently with the relationship between the dollar and these metals. When the United States was founded, the dollar wasn't just an abstract number, it had a definition. The Coinage Act of 1792 defined the dollar as 371 and a quarter grains of pure silver. That's what the dollar actually was. Later, America gradually transitioned towards a gold standard, and eventually the dollar became fixed to a gold amount instead in 1873. But today, that connection is gone. A dollar no longer is redeemable in silver or gold. So, what exactly is a dollar? I've been thinking about this question a lot, and while I don't have all the answers, I do find one thing pretty interesting. If you were to walk into your local bank today with one Federal Reserve note and ask for an exchange for a physical government issued money, what are they going to hand you? They're not handing you silver, they're not handing you gold, but they are handing you coins. And those coins are overwhelmingly made of a copper based alloy. Today, if you got a clad coin, a dime, quarter, or half dollar, those clad coins, when added up to $1.40, contain about 1 ounce of copper, just like they did in silver when silver circulated. Of course, there's the difference between the troy ounce that measures precious metals and the avoirdupois ounce that measures everything else. But I'm not saying we're on an official copper standard. That's not my point at all. My point is much simpler. Copper is still physically embedded in our current money. Gold isn't, silver isn't, but copper is, and I find that incredibly fascinating. Now here's where my thinking starts to differ from most people. Let's say you decide to agree with me and you want to own some copper. What do? Well, most people go online and buy copper rounds, copper bars, maybe even a fancy 10-pound copper cast ingot. And honestly, they look amazing. I love them. They're fun, they're collectible, but I don't buy them. Not because I don't like them, because I don't think they're an efficient way to accumulate copper. If we compare it to silver, let's say we're buying a 1 ounce silver eagle. Yes, I pay a little bit of premium, but silver itself is valuable enough that that premium represents a relatively small percentage of the total purchase. Copper doesn't seem to work that way. Copper is incredibly inexpensive by comparison, which means when you buy 1 ounce copper round, you're not really paying for the copper, you're paying for someone to melt it, stamp it, polish it, package it, ship it, market it, and sell it to you. The premium often exceeds the value of the copper itself several times over, and that's the opposite of what I'm trying to do as a stacker. So what I actually think is the best way to stack copper is pennies, and it all comes down to that one word, premiums. If you watch my channel for any amount of time, you've probably heard me talk a lot about premiums over and over, and it is just that important. Whether I'm buying gold, silver, or rare coins, I'm always asking myself the same question. How much money is actually buying the metal? But another really important question is, if I were to need that money back, how much would I actually get in return? That question of spread is incredibly important. So let's go ahead and do some math. A pre-1982 Lincoln cent weighs 3.11 grams. 95% of that weight is copper, and that means every single copper coin contains 2.95 grams of copper. That means that 153 and 3/4 cents contains 1 pound of copper, or 9.6 contains 1 ounce of copper. I don't know about you, but I would much rather pay 9.6 cents for an ounce of copper than paying the $2 to $5 that I see online. Recently, I've even seen it get as high as $13 an ounce. And that's something I really enjoy about the hobby of coin roll hunting. It costs almost nothing. This box did cost me $25, but when I'm done searching it, I'll take every zinc penny, roll them back up, and take them back to the bank, and exchange them for probably another box, over and over and over again. The only thing that I'm really accumulating is copper, and that's a pretty efficient system. So let's get to the elephant in the room, selling. Because every stacker eventually has to ask them, how do I get the money if I needed to liquidate it today? Who is going to buy this? Well, with gold, the answer is almost anybody. Coin shops, bullion dealers, refiners, collectors, private buyers. And with silver, it's pretty much the same. But with copper, not so much. Copper isn't primarily an investment metal, it's an industrial metal, which means if you ever wanted to sell large quantities, your most likely buyer is going to be a scrapyard. Now, scrap prices change every day, just like the gold and silver market. Scrapyard prices are based off of the commodities market. Your local yard may be paying a little more or a little less depending on where you live, but to give you a general idea, as I'm recording this video in my area, bare bright copper, which is the cleanest, purest form of scrap copper, will bring somewhere between $5 and $5.50 at many scrap yards. And that's premium material, clean copper wire, no paint, no insulation, no contamination. That's what everybody wants in the scrapyard business. Now, if we compare that to brass, brass contains a lot of copper, but it isn't pure, it's an alloy. Just like these pennies. A high copper red brass is currently being bought somewhere between $4 and $4.50 per pound, while common yellow brass is getting generally less than that. So purity does matter, and the cleaner the material, the more it's worth. And if we compare that to the spot price today of $6.10 per pound, we could see that a copper round of pure copper would get somewhere around 90% of the copper spot price, where these copper pennies or high copper brass alloys would get somewhere around 70% of that spot value. To me, that sounds almost exactly like silver. Pure silver rounds are getting somewhere around 90% of the spot price, where junk silver you get somewhere around 70%. The difference lies in the buying premiums. In silver, people don't like to spend any more than about 20% of the spot price on those premiums of silver. And what that would actually look like in practice for copper today is spending no more than 45 cents per 1 ounce round. But the real interesting story here around pennies is that it is still illegal to melt a penny, well, and a nickel, because it is still legal tender. It's true that the United States has stopped producing new pennies for circulation, but the pennies that already exist are still legal tender, and there are quite possibly trillions that remain in circulation. But no new pennies are being added to the supply, and that creates an interesting situation. Every year, some pennies disappear. They're lost or collected or removed from circulation by people searching for copper. That supply of copper pennies is not growing. It's slowly moving in the opposite direction, and it has been since 1982. So, what happens when this coin stops being money? Throughout history, we've seen it happen. A coin can go from being a currency to becoming a collectible or being valued for just its metal content. Today, these pennies are still money. They still have the 1 cent face value, and they can still be spent over the counter. But the interesting question is what will happen in the future whenever they transition from a currency to a commodity. If that happens, the market would no longer care about the number stamped on the coin, it would only care about the material. And that brings us back to the difference between copper and copper alloys. It seems like eventually these coins will be considered almost like a junk silver. We'll call it junk copper. So I'll just leave you with this question. Would you rather be buying a $3 1 ounce round that does contain pure copper and will get you the best offer possible of about 32 cents? Or would you rather be buying these copper pennies at about 9.6 cents per ounce for the future possibility of being able to sell them to a scrapyard at 70% of their value, which today would be about 26 cents per ounce? As you can see, these pennies do add up very quickly, and in this entire box of $25, I actually ended up with 291 copper Lincoln cents, 12 wheat cents, and 4 Canadian pennies. I also pulled out all the 2009s, as you can see here. This is the oldest wheat cent from 1937. And I will be going back through all of these zinc cents to find any varieties or errors that I might have missed. I'll be doing that off camera and just making a YouTube short anytime I find something, so stay tuned for that. And until next time, if you like the video, make sure to hit it with a thumbs up, go down into the comment section for any questions or comments about this topic, share the video with someone you think needs to hear this, and subscribe if you haven't already. To my long-term subscribers, thank you so much for your continual support. It really does mean a lot. Head over to josephsreserves.com to check out my merchandise, zip-up bags, coffee mugs, and the It's Today Again coffee. But most of all, thank you so much for watching. And just remember, every ounce adds up, so no matter how small, just keep stacking.